the intro music. Yeah! Woohoo!
Welcome back to Star Trek Fleet Commanders. Today, I've been debating this topic all day. And not really debating, but we're conversating how to make this choice right here between Mirror Ezri and Mirror Troi. Now, the number one thing that we need to cover at the beginning of this video is how this actually applies to those of you who are going to watch it as this is happening. This is the first month they're trying this new choice token system, which means if you purchase the battle pass for 20 bucks, you'll get enough of this currency, rare officer choice, to pick which one of the rares you want. So you have Mirror Troi, Mirror Ezri. Now, this is obviously not going to apply to everybody, but since this game will sell 40, 50,000 plus battle passes a month, it depends on the month. Maybe it's low, maybe it's high. It's still something that is going to affect a lot of you out there. It's important for us to cover that, even though I've not unlocked either officer, because you can't unlock it until the end, and I might as well make the video now and explain to you how some of this works. So let's talk about Mirror Ezri and Mirror Troi. To start, we're going to actually go into the officer menu and kind of break them down that way. I think that's the most logical way to approach this. So let's look at Mirror Ezri. Now I'll go ahead and give you a forewarning. I'm choosing Mirror Ezri for one reason that has nothing to do with in-game, and that's the fact that there's no other Ezri in the game, and I love Ezri. Like when DS9 was happening, I loved Ezri. That does not mean I didn't like Jadzia. I just have always loved Nicole DeBoer and kind of had a crush on her when I was a kid. So I'm picking Ezri. But that doesn't mean that you have to make the same choice. So let's go over to the captain's and officer's ability and discuss what they are and how they work. So on combat start, while against a battleship player, Mirror Ezri increases your apex barrier by 7,500 for the duration of combat. Now, you see right here, it says every 100 apex barrier increases the damage you take by 1%. And these numbers are already getting kind of big and inflated. But anyway, here's clean it up. The officer ability on round start against players with Assimilate increases your kinetic weapon damage by 450%, maxing out at 350%. And the big key with that captain's ability is the synergization. And yeah, Rev makes up words and he has no qualms about it. There you go, are the total numbers there. Now the key is taking a look at that captain's ability, looking how much you get from being synergized. You see 18,750. That's a lot, y'all. So what does that mean in terms of translating onto the field? Well, if you were to run Mirror Ezri as a captain with full synergy, you're getting 45,000 apex barrier. That is not counting any researches you might have unlocked or primes you might have bought or anything like that. That is just pure apex barrier. That's a pretty high stinking amount, meaning more survivability. Now, there are some slight sacrifices with this. For example, if you wanted to run full synergy, you're losing like the isolytic bonus that you would get from Mirror Picard if he were captain. But there are still applications for where this can be useful, and we'll go over that at kind of like the end point of this video, but I want to cover Mirror Troi as well with her witchy outfit, which kind of like the witchy outfit. But anyway, Mirror Troi, you're going to notice some similarities. Officer ability. On round, starting against players with Assimilate increases your energy weapon damage. Literally the same thing we just read, but now it's energy instead of kinetic. What about the captain's ability? Psionic tactics. On combat start, when against an explorer player, increases your apex barrier by 7,500. Again, looks quite familiar. If you go back all the way, wrong direction, if you go all the way back to Mr. Data, so right here, you'll see his self-improvement against interceptors. So you see we kept a theme with the rare PvP officers here, but he has a slightly different one where he gives you Assimilate. So he's also the only engineer here, which is critical for full synergy. All right, let's just skip right on back over here. Now let's take a look at her total numbers. Again, rotate the screen, synergization appears, and you'll see the same thing that you saw with Mirror Ezri. You can get 45,000 if you went full synergy in terms of an apex barrier increase, and then you can see the weapons bonus increase. And there are certain ships where that will have more value and certain ships where it won't. Like for example, if you were on a pylon, her officer ability is almost worthless to you, but the captain's ability could be valuable if you're fighting a coroner, just as a rough, minded example. But let's go beyond that real quick. Let's talk about wide use applications, because if you're getting these at the time of unlock, again, we need sourcing. I always am harping on them about sourcing. In fact, I just brought up that the away team primes need sourcing. They've been out a while. That's 3 primes that they should start giving away to players. But when it comes to making the choice here, which one should you go after? And I think a big thing comes down to, or the big decision really comes down to, what level you're at and what you end up facing the most when you're PvPing. And it's also two different paradigms to look at it. Do we talk about what this could mean for us right now, or what we think the game might be in 6 months? And as a player who is always trying to look ahead, I tend to look at the 6-month type deal. So let's look ahead and now. In terms of right now, I would say if you were a G5 or G6 player, I would get Ezri. If I was a G3 or G4 player, I would get Troi. Why would I separate them like that based on advice? I'll give you some examples. Now, I was talking with chat, and I'm sure I'll end up talking to them more. I talked to some people in DMs. Just the basic idea of why you would do Ezri now as a higher level player simply comes down to her captain's ability against battleships. Now, anybody who out there who's watching this video who's a G5 or G6 player, you probably have already connected the dots of where I'm going with that. And like the video and let me know if you have as well. But this comes down to the Borg cube. And if you remember, the Borg cube is kind of worthless in G3 and G4. I mean, I'm not saying you can't use it, but here's the Borg cube. For me, this is not anywhere close to my best ship, and I'm a top-end G4 player. And that's the same thing if you're G3. When you get at level 28, it's cool, it's a Borg cube, it's gorgeous. I have no qualms about any of that. But in terms of PvP value to the players out there, it doesn't really exist until you get into the upper 50s. And then it starts taking off. Get to like that tier 11 range, you start seeing the cube finally pack some tier 11, tier 12. It can finally start doing the crazy damages you'll see from players. I mean, you can debate the tier because it will be different based on what server you're on and what your opponents are, but generally speaking, you need to get into the upper 50s. Whereas mine is tier 8, one part from tier 9, and even if I took a tier 9, it's not touching the ability of my Pylum, my Tribune, or honestly even really my Talios of what I can do in PvP. But that's not the case long term. If you could get a massive apex barrier to fight this, making it tougher for the Borg cube to take advantage of its heavy weapons power, because it does put out some damage. I mean, even now it does. It just doesn't have, the greatest survivability. That's a pretty legit strategy. So if you're a battle pass purchaser or you're a future player watching this video, that is something that you think of. Hey, if my primary targets are battleships, or even don't even look at just battleships. What if you see Dardexes all over your server, right? What if you're seeing lots of, Vorchas, which Rev is going to have here in a month or two? What if you are seeing a lot of Borg cubes? Ezri makes sense if you're looking for either a primary or secondary PvP crew to do those fights. And then on the flip side of that, the reason I talked about Troi being somebody that I would go after if you're G3 or G4 is because, well, you tend to fight a lot of explorers, especially the earlier level that you are, which is going to be, for example, let's say you're level 35, you got a battle pass. What do most players in this game go after? The Enterprise. It's just, it is what it is. It's Star Trek. People love the Enterprise, iconic. Doesn't matter if it's the Kelvin Enterprise. People want the Enterprise. That's the basic logic. Help you fight Enterprises. That's going to give you a big advantage because of the captain's ability, giving you some of that apex early on in the game. Again, it's all about who and how you can acquire these officers, right? It's, can you get them tiered up? The officer abilities are not really that good early tiers, but they do get better. It comes down to really, how are you going to apply this in game? I'll be honest, even though I do PvP, most of my PvP is stuff like OPC hunting. So I'm not as focused on PvP metas as maybe players who are watching this might be. I mean, I've had conversations with, players like, Hussein on server 121, who's also there with Beam, and, K92 and ECO and Bad Wolf, players, Panda, players that are PvPers and high levels that come through our streams and everything and have different play experiences than maybe I do. And for those players, these metas matter. And there are even players who are in the 40s who just simply love PvP and maybe going to focus really hard on what they should go after. For me, it just comes down to my nostalgia as a kid, loving Ezri Dax, even though technically this is not that Ezri, but that's not the point. The point is, it's her enough for me. But there are ways to actually find usage. And again, like even if you're a G4 player, you're still going to run into explorers on new servers. New servers still get the ISS jelly. The logic as to why kind of is out there, but they get the ISS jelly. Coronars are definitely prevalent. Enterprise A's definitely come out and are prevalent. So you already have mirror data, or you can go after mirror data with event store currency to go after the interceptors. So this gives you an option for explorers. The basic logic just comes down to what are you end up facing. If you go after a battle pass this month, then now you have the what you should choose. Or if you're watching this after the fact, just know that the main bonus of these two is really improving survivability through Apex Barrier. And then y'all can kind of decide from there where you want to go. Let me know if you enjoyed the video and if it helped you out in the comment section down below. Hopefully this helps you make the decision. I wish I had some battle logs to show you, but kind of had to get this video out early. The good news is, though, we do know how Apex Barrier works. We've seen Apex Barrier with the Mirror Picard crew already, so that part's not really a shock to us. So we already have that. Love you. Deuces. Live long and plunder. Stay safe with the Space Cowboys. Catch me on Discord, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, etc. However you need to contact me, happy to help you out.
An even better outro than the intro. For the Empire and glory to your house.